Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about professional tenants. These are the ones who present well during the screening process, who fabricate elaborate stories, and who encourage landlords to skip steps in their due diligence. Ultimately, the professional tenant has one goal: to squat in your property rent-free for as long as the legal system will protect them. They use every trick in the book to delay proceedings. On today's show, we highlight the top 5 tricks that professional tenants use to cheat a landlord. So here we go. Number 1, paying partial rent. Oftentimes, professional tenants will only pay a portion of the rent each month. When a landlord has accepted partial rent for 1 month, then the laws generally will not allow eviction for that month, and provides the tenant with more time in the property with overdue rent, and most often they'll continue to delay each month. Number 2, paying in cash. Cash is more difficult to track, making it the preferred medium for professional tenant payments. These tenants will lie about making cash payments, or even go as far as faking rent receipts. As a landlord, you should avoid taking cash payments as much as possible. Cash payments foster these types of actions. When a landlord is in the courtroom, they want to show a track record of traceable payments followed by no payments. Keep in mind that in some states, landlords are not allowed to refuse cash. If a tenant insists on paying cash, you must have a system and a process where each and every time, both you and the tenant sign a receipt at the time the cash is accepted. Number 3, asking for more time. Some tenants are going to approach their landlord and plead for more time to pay rent. This tactic is usually accompanied by a heart-tugging story of the hardships they're currently battling that prevents them from paying. It'll be something like a family member who's ill, or some relative in some far-off land that needs money. Unfortunately, it's difficult for a landlord to know or test the legitimacy of these stories, and a tough decision has to be made. Allowing for a longer payment period often will make things worse. While it might be emotionally difficult to draw a line in the sand, a landlord is not a bank that provides loans. When a tenant is late on rent, they should go to their friends, their family, a bank, or another source for a personal loan. The relationship between the tenant and the landlord should be strictly professional and real estate related. If a tenant still cannot pay the rent when it's past due, then the next step is an eviction notice or starting a proceeding in the tenant-landlord tribunal. A landlord may want to consider suggesting to the tenant that if they are late on rent, then they will release the tenant from their lease so the tenant can find a more affordable unit. Might be easier in the long run to have a tenant who can't afford the rent leave than to constantly chase a tenant for money. Number 4, this one's a classic. The tenant will claim the property is uninhabitable. Professional tenants will try to claim the rental is uninhabitable as a scheme to not pay rent. Typically, their process is submitting a maintenance request and claiming it was never addressed. Then they will withhold rent or break the lease and reference the clause on maintenance and habitability of the property. Every maintenance request should be tracked in a system, providing evidence that the request has been acknowledged and updates have been provided in a timely manner. This type of documentation is going to save a landlord in the courtroom. When you show that you have a system and you apply it religiously, that's what's going to save you in the courtroom. While landlords have no power over the judge, maintaining records and photos of your properties can protect yourself from these types of situations. When a tenant makes a claim that the property is unfit to live in, the landlords must refile with proof of a habitable environment. Tenants will then proceed to trash the property in an attempt to justify their claim. Keeping a running log of property conditions and pictures will help prove your case. If a tenant damages your property, they are the ones who caused the damage, and they're liable for the damage they cause. And number 5, this is the last one. They will make false claims asking the rent tribunal for more time, asking for a stay of proceedings. In many jurisdictions, the judge will give the tenant additional time to prove their claim and reschedule the hearing, establishing a new deadline for the tenant to prove their claim. But the tenants know the tribunal's pretty busy, and the case will likely be delayed even further. So if you find yourself with a professional tenant, how do you screen to prevent them from entering your property? Number 1, ask for government-issued identity papers. You can then perform a comprehensive search, including credit checks, and the professional tenants tend to go after the nice landlords who are innocent and naive. Professional property managers are rarely targeted because they're too difficult to fool. Their systems are too robust. So you think about that, keep an eye out for the professional tenant. Have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.